Hello, I'm Chrissy Seaton and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I want to talk to you about how important it is for older people such as my age and a bit younger, stay in touch with our younger generation. We have a moral obligation, I think, to spend time talking to the grandchildren, the younger generation that's closest to you, that you have access to. They have parents and other peers that are able to argue and, bounce things off as well. But I think, and I'm speaking as a grandmother, I think we have a unique opportunity to be a voice of reason and understanding, and also a bouncing board for them where they can come to you and run things by you and say, what do you think of that? Or is that right? Is that my understanding? Is it correct? And it's important that children have someone like that they're not going to be ridiculed if they ask you a stupid question or something like that, that you're going to give them a reasonable and accurate answer or suggestion. So let's start by saying that I, for myself, are very privileged because on our farm, there's 3 generations of my family live here. And I know I've mentioned it many times before in previous videos, but every time I mention it and become conscious of it, I get this lovely feeling in my heart. I'm so privileged and blessed to be in this situation. And of course, I only have 3 grandchildren, 2 of which are growing up and independent and out in the wide world. But the youngest, Billy, is only 14 and he's still at high school. And I guess it's through Billy that I've come to understand how important these conversations we have with the younger generation are. Not only are they important to the younger generation, but they're important for us to hear what the younger generation think or understand. So be a voice of reason in their lives. And so, for an example, I pick Billy up from the school bus some afternoons during the week when his parents aren't able to do it. And I look forward to these opportunities because I have a captive audience. I have him in the car beside me and we have some great conversations about all and many topics, but it is a wonderful way for me to get an understanding of where the younger generation are and what they're thinking, and all manner of other things as well. So it is a great privilege for me. And children suddenly become little adults. Billy's 14 now, and this last holidays, I noticed how he suddenly went from being little Billy to Billy the young man. And I'm so surprised at how mature he is and how we can have great conversations together. So what do we talk about? Well, we talk about things like his classes at school. How was your day? What did you do today? What was the best part of today? Subjects he's dealing with that he's interested in, and others that, I've got to do it, so I have to do it, sort of thing. We have all manner of conversations, even about when Anzac Day was coming up. That's Memorial Day for the armed services and past wars in Australia and New Zealand. And I then was able to tell him about my father, which is his great-grandfather, fought in New Guinea and had medals and things like that. So he was old enough to grasp the concept because they'd discussed it at school. He was able to tell me what the discussion was, and I was able to fill in some gaps then in relation to my father, who he was just at that age that he could grasp the enormity of that, and he felt there was a link now, a link between what he'd learnt at school and then his great grandfather. So that's kids love that. They love, young adults need to see connections with things, and I could see his eyes lit up. I thought he would know that, but maybe he'd been told and he's forgotten or something, but his eyes lit up and he was really interested in what I could tell him. We often discuss topics at school. Maths is one, and these are things that are interesting for both him and myself, because we talked about Pythagoras' theorem, and all the things surrounding that. And anyway, eventually he said, "Grandma, how did you get on? You wouldn't have had calculators, would you?" I said, No. I said, "We had pencil and paper." I said, he said, "Well, how did you remember all those things?" I said, "Well, we had to know the formulas. We had to learn them off by heart. And this was our calculator. It was up here. This is where they were stored, all the formulas. And then we got our pencil and paper out and worked it out. It's how you did it. We didn't know any better." And of course, nowadays they have their calculators. So he was sort of, wow, suddenly Grandma was pretty smart that she could do all that. So we had a few little, test runs with it and things like that. But it sort of, he suddenly had to realise, I think, that, the world changes and we have certain abilities and aids that come to hand, like the calculators that they have today, etc. Their phone, I mean, everything, they take their phone into the classroom, pretty much everything's done on their phone now, which I happen to think is marvellous. But I think it's important that they can also work out the area of how much fencing they're going to need, how much linear fencing are they going to need for that area. They might have to work that out on paper if they don't have their calculator. And what's more, they've still got to know the formula to calculate it, even with their calculators. So, there's lots of things to consider there. But it is important that we continue to communicate where possible with the younger generation. These conversations should be two-way too, not just you, the adult, the grown-up doing all the talking or the child doing all the talking. We should have two-way conversation and encourage that. And the one thing I like to always ask Billy is, well, what's your opinion? Or I might say, first of all, well, now tell me, what's your understanding of such and such, blah, blah, blah. And he'll tell me, and then I might say, okay, so your opinion is, and then we might break that down and talk about it. How did you arise at that opinion? If you could change something about that, what do you think would be the correct thing to change? How would you like to see that changed? And it will shock you how deep these young people can think. But it's what we put into their mind, it's what we stimulate them with that is important. We must teach them to be critical thinkers, to analyse things correctly. And you will only do that by respecting them, not talking them down all the time. But how do we teach them in a respectful manner? Well, we have to say, if they give an opinion, we'll say, now, what did you base that opinion on? What's understandings helped you formulate that opinion or come to that conclusion? So you've got to get them talking to you, debating and discussing in a non-threatening atmosphere. So you say, tell me what you understand about that. What are your conclusions? And of course, always say, how do you think you could improve upon that? How could we, given that reasoning, is there any way we could improve upon that or change that or make it a better understanding or a better practice or a better path to go down, and get them stimulated? And even if it still is not, in your opinion, what you agree with, you also have to create a line of we agree to disagree. It's all right to say, I sometimes say to Billy, well, that's not my understanding. My understanding is blah, blah, blah. However, we must never fail to look at both sides of the equation, or there might be 3 or 4 sides to it. But we must look at it and then draw all those angles and then draw our own conclusion. But at this point in time, we can agree to disagree and come back later and perhaps discuss this. There are also some key words you need to encourage younger generation to use, no matter what it is they're discussing, whether it be sport, whether it be academic topic, whatever. It's what, why, when, who, and can is another word as well. So let's talk about that. So what is your understanding on that topic? And why? Why is this so? When did you come to that conclusion or that understanding? Did anyone influence you? Who, in other words, influenced you? And they might say, oh, I read this and it was written by, or blah, blah, blah. Sometimes they don't know who it's written by, but they read it. Or, no, it was on the internet, things like this. And then you absorb all that and discuss that with them. And then you say, can you see or understand another view of this topic? Could you perceive there could be another side to this topic? And so encourage them. It's a little bit like a softer version of debating. You must be always respectful to that young person, because if you're respectful to them, they will then not be afraid to enter into debate and discussion with people, and also they will learn to do it in a respectful manner. There's a magpie out looking through the glass door here, and my little dog is wanting to get out. No, Thomas, not today. So armed with these key words and getting the conversation going, you need to always stimulate the child to think of things in a different way. Or a situation might be, there might have been an incident or something happened at school or whatever, and they may have witnessed something or have an understanding of something, and say, well, look, what is your, let's pick that apart now. Let's step back from that now and see if we can understand another view of this, or how this could have unfolded in a worse way, or could it have been handled better. And so you're teaching the young person to be observant, to not be afraid to just pause, take a deep breath, observe. Don't jump into conclusions or actions straight away. Be thoughtful. So there's those key words: who, what, when, where, and why. You can't go wrong with that. Who, what, when, where, and why. And teach the young generation to put those key words in their thought and analysis programs and processes that they go through. Because truth is, there's always another side to the story. We've learnt that probably by the time we start school. There's 2 sides to every story. He said, she said, they said, and what have you. I think in conclusion, I would say that above all, you must keep those lines of communication open. Now, as a grandparent, that's easy for us to do. It's easier. because if we have a good relationship with our grandchildren, they'll often come to you. If mum and dad say no, they'll go to grandma or grandpa, and there's an opportunity then. Well, do you where you can say, you perhaps think that mum and dad have made the right decision in saying they can't go out with these young people at night unsupervised without an adult. They're only 14, 13. You can't just let them out of a car in the main street of a city and let them go berserk and expect they're going to be there at midnight on the street waiting for you to pick them up. It doesn't work that way. A lot can happen. So you need to tease it apart and think, well, let's understand why mum and dad refused to give you permission. Let's understand that. Why do you think, what's your understanding of why they said that? Refused it. Oh, mum and dad won't let me have. Well, now hang on, wait a minute. It isn't that they don't want you to have fun, but other things can happen. So you need to sort of prise the brain matter open a bit, that they can understand. They may not agree with it and they still might not be happy with mum and dad's decision, but at least if you deal with the situation correctly and question them, the who, what, when, where, why type of thing, they grasp an understanding of why mum and dad have reached that decision or why they're not allowed to do that. And also it's a great exercise, because you know what they'll do? They'll say to themselves, if they want to do something else, the first thing that's going to come into their mind, who, what, when, where, and why. I've got to be ready for this. I've got to think this out before I ask mum and dad. They're going to ask me questions. I've got to have answers. And you know what? In a way, it self-regulates them. It's a way of them self-regulating their thoughts, their perceived rights at certain ages, and what is reasonable and permissible at certain ages. How sensible am I? What's my past track record been? Have I always been responsible? When my parents have given me some leave of absence or some privileges, have I abused those or not? Have I honoured them? So these are ways of a grandparent sort of or an older person, could be an aunt or an uncle, anything, but you've got to sort of be the voice of reason for them, but still be their friend and say, if I was your friend in your friends group, I would be saying, no, don't do that, Billy. Or, yeah, I think, I reckon, that's not a bad idea, Billy, but, your mum and dad will have to agree to it, sort of thing. You can grandparents have privileges where you can skate along the edges of things within the family and be a buffer zone and still remain in good relationships with your grandchild and certainly with the child's parents by being a voice of reason. Don't be the one chastising all the time. Don't be saying, oh, don't be silly, mum said you can't have it. But tease it apart and say, why do you think mum said no? Just let's think about this. So keep the communication lines open with our younger generations and speak to them like an adult. When they get to 14, when they are at puberty stage, that you got to start talking to them like an adult, because they're in a difficult age space at this time. But so you have to be respectful of their opinion and their beliefs and their wishes. You've got to be respectful and always keep those lines of communication with them open. Don't you be the one that shuts off the lines of communication. Even if you both have disagreements, they're respectful disagreements. You can say to your grandchild, I was your age once. I know where you're coming from. I know, been through this, been there, done that. And I know I can remember, it's not, not that long ago, I can remember being in your same situation now and how I felt when my parents said no, or when they roused at me, or, grounded me. I know what that feels like. I know what you're thinking right now. Let me give you, though, the benefit of the age and experience I have, because in hindsight now, I understand they were perfectly right in denying me that privilege or refusing to let me do such and such or whatever it was. I now know that I wouldn't have let my children do that. So with age, we learn to understand things. We think it's unfair right now when you're at 14 or 15, but you know what? Won't be long and you'll be thinking, oh, I'm so glad Mum and Dad put their foot down about that. They were right. But as a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle, you're in a great position to be able to be a mentor in a way. Don't be judgmental, but, you can always say, let's look at this from another angle, and ask them questions. And, you want to make the child make that decision or come to that understanding without you having to say, see, I told you I was right. You don't want that. You want that open discussion and respect. And even if they still disagree with you, your voice of reasoning, say, look, I know you don't understand or agree with me right now. You think I'm siding with Mum and Dad. Well, yes, I am, because you have to give me the benefit of age and wisdom. And I did lots of things too, and I had to grow up the same way you did, wanting permission and maybe being refused it. But now I'm grateful that my mother and father did raise me like that. And I love you. You're my grandchild. That's why I'm giving you the benefit of my experiences when I was your age. So keep those lines of communication open. But and you just need to be a voice of reason and a sounding board that they can come, and they know you're not going to ridicule them or rouse at them, but you're going to say, look, hey, let's look at this from another angle. How can we get around this? Or, you've got to make them think and actually be solving the problem, but you've got to be steering it and guiding it. And, it does come a lot easier because age and wisdom are marvellous, marvellous teachers. And why is that? It's because God wants us to talk to the younger generation. Be a loving grandma and grandpa, but you've still got an opinion. You can still say, hey, listen, I was your age once. And then, they start to think, oh, yes, and then they might ask you questions. Well, what happened? And then that's a wonderful way to launch in to this two-way discussion, because you're, as the grandparent, are a safe zone. The child will feel they can say things to you because you are that middle person, so to speak, that they can come to, and they know they're not going to get ridiculed, and you're not going to break their confidence and things like that. That, all things within reason. So I think we do need to make a point of being available to the younger generation. Be a voice of kindness and reason. Try not to be too judgmental, but always you can speak from your experiences, and don't be afraid to tell that child you were in the same situation. You desperately wanted to go and do this, that, or the other, and you were too young to realise the pitfalls that could present, and you're sort of glad now Mum and Dad did put their foot down. In the meantime, thank you so much for subscribing to my channel. If you're not a subscriber, please do so. Press on the little icon at the bottom of the screen. Subscribe to my channel. Leave a comment. And I will talk to you again in another video. Bye, and God bless.